Hey everyone, my name is Lauren, and today I'm going to be talking about how you can tell the difference between a good psychic and a bad psychic. So the reason why I'm doing this video is because I have had so many clients come to me, so many friends, family members come to me that have been turned off by psychics because they had a bad reading. And that sucks so bad because there are people out there that call themselves psychics, that call themselves intuitive, that are really not doing it correctly. And again, correctly meaning, do they have good ethics? That's all I'm really talking about. And I think it's a reason why psychics have a bad rap, is because there are those people out there doing it wrong, doing it all these bad ways that make people feel uncomfortable. So to me, it's important that we promote having good ethics with psychics. And again, I get this from my coach. I mean, if I didn't have her, my mentor, Karen Fox, with the Aspen program for psychic development, I don't know how I would have done this, because to me, I'm very skeptical. I'm very much about treating people correctly. And this whole realm of psychic stuff it can be weird and it can be muddy and people can treat you bad because of it. And so this is how I ground myself in something that I know I'm doing right, because I'm having those good ethics. So the first thing is, a good psychic should never be only reading the future. If you have somebody that's only reading the future, they are probably not understanding how they can help you now. They are just trying to satisfy you, to give you the, yeah, it's gonna happen, no, it's not gonna happen. But usually they tend to be on the, yeah, it's gonna happen. I feel like a good psychic is somebody who turns your question around and says, what can you do now to get that? Because I feel like it's probably that you want to be in a relationship or you want to have that job. So instead of being like, oh yeah, you will have it, or no, you won't have it, I'm going to figure out things you can do now to actually achieve that result. So I think, again, it's really important that they're not just focusing only on the future. They are figuring out what they can do to help you now. They're not just assuring you, they're giving you action items. Bad psychics also use buzzwords. So buzzwords like ghosts and twin flames and I can't think of any other ones at the moment, but there's a lot of buzzwords that go around, and it's like, I think what these words are used for is they're used to make you feel like you don't have the information, and that there's a twin flame out there for you, and why don't you have it, and why can't you find them? And I think that at the core, somebody that's using these buzzwords are just trying to get you in the door and just trying to get you to pay. And I think that a good psychic understands that they shouldn't have to scare you or shouldn't have to, advertise you into getting a reading. You'll come if you're wanting a reading. I think the other problem with this is, if you talk about twin flames, if you talk about ghosts, there's this absoluteness, and you can sort of tell that, that psychic probably believes in those, which is totally fine. It's more, how limiting are their beliefs because of that? How narrow-minded is their vision, and how narrow-minded is that reading going to be because of that? And I'll get to that in a little bit with another one of these tips. A good psychic should never ask you to come back again and again on a regular basis. If you have a psychic that's constantly saying, oh, you need to come back, you need to pay for more time, there's a fine line here, because I do say this every now and then to my clients, and it's usually when I feel like there is so much information that there's no way we can get to it in an hour, and the subject that we are talking about is a big deal. I will occasionally tell somebody they might want to come back to me, but I never ever say you need to come back to me. I always leave them with tools of how they can read themselves in case they don't come back to me. I think, again, that this is a case of them just trying to get that money, trying to get more work out of you, and kind of creating this false reliance on them. And if someone is empowering you to rely on them and not yourself, that's a problem. Psychics should never ever give commands, and I am huge on this one. I'm gonna get grumpy, but the reason why commands are a problem is because they are telling you, in essence, that you have no free will. And I always say in my readings that you should take my advice like a friend's advice. You, at the end of the day, have your own free will and you can make your own decisions. So these are my intuitive suggestions, not intuitive commands. So if you have, and I have had a reading before recently where the psychic sat there and said, you need to do this and I am right and I am never wrong. And I got this reading with a friend, and it was the most demotivating thing ever. And if there's somebody who is so stuck in, you have to do this and you have to listen to me and I have to be right, it sort of makes you wonder what's going on. And I feel like it tends to be that they're insecure in their own intuitive abilities. And so they overcompensate by trying to force it down your throat, basically, so that you accept it more because they're insecure that it's not correct in the first place. So that's another red flag to look out for. Another thing that a good psychic shouldn't do is swear by a certain god or deity or being. This one can kind of be variable. I do think that there's psychics who particularly only work in certain types of religions, like Christian psychics or pagan psychics or whatever it is. Again, know that religion and psychic ability are two totally different things. I've got a video on it. But it's important to me that when I'm giving a reading to somebody, I'm not saying God is telling me. I'm not saying angels are telling me. I mean, sometimes I do, but I try to term it with spirit guides. I try to keep it general, spirit helpers, the universe. And anybody that swears by a specific god or deity, it just, again, it's more that, you know, if they're only accepting this information to be true, what if there's other things outside of that realm that you need to hear, but they can't give it to you because they're filtering it out? So that's more of a problem of how much are they limiting that psychic information because they're like, oh no, I'm only talking to this guide. You know what I mean? So the more open you are, typically the more information that you get. A good psychic usually says some sort of affirmation or intention at the beginning of a reading saying, we're doing this for your highest and best good. We are only communicating with beings of your highest and best light. Sometimes they say this to themselves, but it might be a good thing to ask. I find that if you sit down for a reading and it doesn't seem like they are connecting with any sort of guide in particular and they're just reading from nowhere, who knows who's giving them advice? I think that's very important to make sure that they are connecting with only beings for your highest and best good. Another thing that a bad psychic does is they fish. And fishing is when they ask you so many questions that they're basically letting you lead the conversation instead of letting them lead the conversation. Now, I think that this is a crutch that psychics get into because it's a lot easier to just ask questions and repeat back what they say. And I try really hard not to do this. I try to just talk the whole time and just go, go, go. And if you find that during a reading that they're just constantly asking questions and then you're like, you know, I don't think they gave me any information that I didn't give them, that they just didn't like sort of guess, that might be another red flag warning that they might not be the best psychic. Sort of going along with that is also advice giving. Some psychics are honestly more of counselors, and there's nothing wrong with that. It's more that they're not actually using their intuitive ability. They should be advertising themselves as counselors. So advice giving, you know, during readings, I say, this is my intuition saying this. And then sometimes I'll be like, this is my personal opinion. This is my counseling advice. So I keep that very separate so people know what's me and what's my guides. And I try very hard not to go into that advice giving area. But if you feel like they're basically just, giving you advice like a girlfriend would, it's really hard to tell. It's really hard to describe, but you'll know it, you'll feel it. That could be another sign that they're just not tapping into their intuition. They're just blabbing. Another thing that a bad psychic does is make you feel like shit after a reading. And so I mentioned before a reading that me and my friend got, and that psychic was sort of like, you have to do what I say, I'm never wrong. She kept saying she was never wrong. And I think my friend a couple days later texted me. She's like, I am so demotivated. I feel so off. That reading has thrown me off so much. And the thing is a reading should never deteriorate you. It should always resonate with you. And I mean, even if it makes you sad or unhappy, it should be kind of like the bittersweet sad, or the sad that makes you motivated to get up and do something. But if it's making you feel like crap and it's making you depressed, it probably wasn't a good reading. And so when those readings happen, I do also think of them as sort of a blessing in disguise, because it tells us, okay, everything that they said threw me off, so maybe it was a perfect affirmation of what I shouldn't be doing, and I need to do the opposite of what they're saying. So it's not a total loss. And the last piece of advice I have for how do you know if a psychic is a good psychic? A good psychic is willing to be wrong. You know, what we do with our psychic abilities, we are not perfect. If we were perfect, we would be a spirit guide. You know, we are encumbered by these bodies, by our judgments, by our biases, by whatever happened earlier in the day. And sometimes I can be wrong. Sometimes I can be off. Sometimes I cannot be connected. So ways that you can tell that they're doing this correctly is if they're asking you, does that resonate? Does that make sense? And then if they're wrong, not fighting you, saying, okay, I could be off on that. You know, people respect psychics a lot more when they admit that humanness about them, because we are human. And again, this goes back to that reading that my friend and I had. If you are claiming that you are never wrong and you are always right, it makes you wonder what that insecurity is there of why they're saying that. And it's probably because they're insecure because they know that they are wrong sometimes. Awesome, guys. So I hope these tips are helpful for you. These will be great in learning if a psychic is good for you or not. And it just keeps those red flags kind of in the back of your mind so you can know when to walk away. So I'm curious, let me know in the comments, have you had a bad reading before? Have you had a reading that just did not sit well with you? What did it look like? What happened? I'm curious. Go ahead and like this video, and don't forget to subscribe. I've got a ton more metaphysical videos coming your way. And thanks for watching, guys. And always remember, at the end of the day, to trust your own intuition.